guys, so in this lesson I'm going to discuss what the left hand does in a blues and then give you a whole heap of patterns that you can practice with your left hand to put into your blues. So essentially the left hand is there to keep the beat and to keep the rhythm going and to give the whole song some bass, while your right hand's doing stuff like that. You want your left hand to essentially play something nice and bassy to give the whole song a bit of balance and to make it like nice and round, essentially. If you're playing in a band, you don't really need to sort of have the left hand keeping the beat and playing the bass, because you've got a drum kit which keeps the beat and a bass which plays the bass. So instead you can do like little comping, like syncopated chords. Stuff like that, or anything else really. If you've got a bass guitar and a drum keeping the whole thing moving forward, then you don't really have to do very much with your left hand at all. But if you're playing solo, you really want to keep the beat and the bass going so that it pushes the whole thing forward. So blues, as well as boogie woogie and rock and roll, generally have a pretty like a driving beat that really pushes forward. The difference between those three genres is pretty like fuzzy at the borders. Generally, a blues is slower and it's swung, so a boogie woogie is generally also swung, but quite a bit faster. And rock and roll is fast, and it's usually straight rather than swung. And if you don't know the difference between straight and swung, check out my video on the difference. But essentially, it sounds like this. Otherwise, the styles have a similar pattern and idea behind them. And in fact, once you've learnt the chord progression, which I covered in my last video, you'll start noticing the 12-bar blues everywhere. It's in heaps of rock songs, obviously blues songs, in pop songs and country songs everywhere. It's quite a widely used chord progression. So, let's get straight into it, and I'll play you a whole bunch of left-hand patterns, and I'll write them down for you as always in the description. Feel free to leave any comments or questions, and I'll tell you which notes I'm playing as I go along. So the first thing is the easiest, it's just the chord effectively. You can do it with an alternating bass, so just the C7 for example. You can go up to the F and go through the whole chord progression like that. Otherwise, you can alternate between the first and the fifth, so the C and the G in the case of the C7, in the bass. So that's not especially bluesy, but it's a good place to start because it sort of reinforces the chords that you're playing. The classic blues left hand is really one of the simplest as well. Is just rocking back and forth on the G and the A, so the 5th and the 6th, with hitting the C as well. And so really, I should say, all these things should probably be played down in this octave to give it a bit more bass, but given the camera angles facing around this area, I'm going to be playing it here. So that's one. Another variant of that is, instead of just rocking back and forth on the G and the A, you play the G, A and the B flat, so you go 5, 6 up to the flat 7. Another good one is, and obviously, go through that, using that pattern, go through each of the F and the G and follow the chord progression. Another good one is using the C6 arpeggio, chord arpeggio, so that'll be the C, E, G and A, and just playing each one twice, and then going, well, you'll see, the A goes back to the G. but it looks like this. And this can be modified in heaps of different ways to make it a bit more interesting and complex. For example, instead of playing the E twice, you can play the E flat to the E, so it sounds like this. Similarly, you can play, instead of playing the C twice, you can play C once, and then C an octave higher, and then the rest the same. Otherwise, to make it even more complex, instead of playing the G twice, you can go back to the C. So it looks like this. Or you can play that whole thing using the C as a pedal note and just playing it with every single other note. And so on. Another good one is using the F and the C triad. And rocking back and forth between those. So it looks like this. F, C, F, C. Another variant of that is instead of playing F and A at the very beginning, you play E flat and A. So that gives a bit more of an F7 sound rather than a F major sound. Another classic boogie woogie one is just hitting the C and the G, and then rolling between the E flat and the E. A slightly more complex one goes as follows. So the notes there are C, C, E, F, G flat, G, 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 C, C, E, F, G flat, D, G, G, G. So that's a good one. That's pretty difficult to get along with your right hand, but you can practice that up. Another New Orleans style bass would be something like this. And so on. You can make that a bit more complex by chucking the C at the top in as well. And you can make that even more complex by throwing in the flat third as a grace note or as a triplet. I'll show you what I mean. So essentially I go C, C, then the E flat as a grace note sliding down to the E, to the G, and then E flat, E, G as a triplet. And the last one I'll show you is the bass from Lucille, which is essentially just the C7 or equivalent 7 chord played up as an arpeggio. So that's really it. You just need to practice them up and keep practicing them again and again and again and again until they more or less, they're in your muscle memory. You can play them with your eyes closed, in your sleep, whatever the cliche is. And then you can start start improvising various things with your right hand to go over the bass in your left hand that just keeps repeating and repeating over the 12-bar blues progression. That's pretty much it. You can also increase and decrease the speed of any of those left hands to suit whichever style you're playing in. And yeah, so that's it. Like I said, check the description, leave a comment. In the next lesson, I'm going to be covering a whole heap of different scales that you can use over the blues progression. So not just the blues scale, though I will show you the blues scale. And I'll explain how they all fit in and why they fit in. And I'll show you some weird sounding ones as well, just to practice and get some new sounds out of. But yeah, anyway, get onto that if you're interested. See ya.